this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Moore. After years of spending time with the dead and their families, I learned something really quick early on in my career, as a matter of fact. When I was in my early 20s, and it's a term that we use now, an acronym actually, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Because most people that experience a death, for many, it's the first time, and even more so those that experience death from a traumatic event like gunshot wounds or stab wounds or bludgeonings or poisonings. It's just a lot to absorb. I hold that in America, we are almost one body of people, almost like our own organism. And there's just so much that we can absorb at one point in time. Over the past month or so, we have been going through the throes of dealing with the death of a young man, certainly a young man by my standards, who stood high on stage. And his death was not from coronary artery disease. It was not a CVA or a stroke. It wasn't pancreatic cancer. It wasn't lightning falling from the heavens. It was a single round fired from within a range of 200 yards that struck him in his neck. Today, I want to have a further discussion about the murder of Charlie Kirk and what evidence might exist and what the future holds. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, you know me pretty well. Not as well as Kimmy knows me, but you know me pretty well, and you can pick up many times, I'm sure, on the tonality of my voice. And no, I did not get up on the wrong side of the bed today. I got up on the wrong side of the internet, I guess, which happens more frequently. I guess I'm in that get off my lawn phase in life. But I am, sometimes you want to try to stem the tide of misinformation, but many times it seems as though you're spitting in the ocean to raise the water level. Mm-hmm. And I've been involved in, over the past couple of weeks, several high-profile media appearances, and I'm struck, I think, by the lack of education, the lack of understanding, and the presence, I think, of malicious mercenaries is what I'll call them, that are indwelling out there in the blogosphere and everywhere else. Because I have to imagine that that last named group are there solely for the purpose of creating anarchy and discord.
You go on a talk show to talk about what actually transpired in the murder of Charlie Kirk. And people want you to call it an assassination. If you don't call it an assassination, Joe, they can't take you seriously. You're dealing with the murder. How was Charlie Kirk murdered? What took place? And when I saw a question at a minute and 30 seconds into an interview you did where somebody said, he won't call it an assassination, I cannot take him seriously. And I thought, what are your credentials? Who are you writing this? Are you doing this from your mom's basement? Are you doing it at the convenience store where you keep calling out sick because you don't have any bills to pay because your mom pays for them? I'm trying to figure out who is now equal in terms of their ability to contradict and chastise you for whatever you say or do because you won't call it an assassination. That's a political term.
Yeah, it is. And listen, I have tried to stay away from the term. It floats around and it does not easily roll off of my tongue because I'm averse to it, simply because I have seen over the years, and there are multiple examples of this, Dave, when we begin to treat transgressions against society, which are enumerated in our canon of law, we begin to treat one individual event differently than how it has been treated in the past relative to other events, and designated something other than what it actually was. The slope becomes very slippery. 3, 2. The slope becomes very slippery at that point in time. You lose control of the entire, in this case, I think, control of the entire investigation. And I got to tell you, I take exception, first off, from how the investigation started off with even Kash Patel, with the FBI demanding that we have information to release immediately.
Okay, explain why that is. Explain why that when an investigation begins, Joe.
Yeah.
Define that. Tell me why what he was asking for is not something that you, as a professional investigator, would expect to have to turn over to the public.
Well, because it is a prosecutable case, and anything that I give to somebody that is a bureaucrat, and their purpose there is something other than a thorough investigation that follows the traditional standard. Okay, let's just say this. Were there any other cases in the news that particular day where the highest ranking law enforcement officer in the country went out and said, I want as much information as I can get right now, and I don't know, suddenly you begin to hear information is being disseminated to the public and nothing has been confirmed yet? And that's a major problem. The first thing that you have done is, by virtue of opening your mouth, you have put the investigators, whether they be FBI agents or a local deputy sheriff in East Egypt, Utah somewhere, in a position where everybody they're going to be gleaning information from, they've got this data pouring in. The case is not, Charlie's body is not even cold yet.
Right.
And they're talking about these things openly. And brother, it hasn't ceased. As a matter of fact, you can go out there to one of those beautiful mountains out there in Utah, snow-capped. It started off on the peak with a tiny snowball, and now this damn thing weighs about a ton. And it is plummeting toward the valley right now. And woe be unto anybody that gets in its path. If in fact you were to take the time to give the police time, and I'm not talking about the FBI here, all right, because this is not an FBI case. They have been brought in to consult on this case, to take advantage of, like, for instance, their ERT, their evidence response team, which is a fine group of people. I've got students that work for ERT or have been on ERT in the past. You've got the ATF that's going to be out there because firearms are involved. And that's all fine and good. Praise the Lord and pass ammunition. The people that are really going to be tasked with this are going to be the state police officers from the Utah State Police, the locals. Oh, and by the way, the medical examiner for the state of Utah. Those are your primary actors here. And then you have the prosecutor. And the prosecutor came up pretty quickly and gave a presser. I don't know if you remember that. And he said, we've got somebody, and we're going to prosecute this case as a capital case. Mm-hmm. And they knew what they had at that particular time. I don't know if I've seen another detailed explanation from the prosecutor. Do we know why? It's not because he's been bought and sold. 1, 2, 3. What's the answer to this? It's a prosecutable case. And he's not going to say anything else. So, you can sit back and you can, pull your hair out and you can beat your head against the wall and you can scream at the universe. But nothing, and I mean nothing, is going to change the fact they're going to move forward with the prosecution. Now, you're entitled to have your opinion about it. I'm entitled to have my opinion about it. But the way my opinion differs is the fact that I've spent time in the morgue. I've spent time in the morgue, and I've spent time around homicide victims, specifically people that have been shot, people that have been shot with high caliber weapons. And the one thing I do know is that no homicide and no gunshot wound are exactly the same. Well, David, I didn't know if you knew this, but, I've been working for Jack State now for over a decade as a professor. And, and I look forward to the day when I can finally hang it up and, sit on the beach somewhere, maybe for a couple of weeks at a time during the year, more so than I do now, or just hang out on my boat. But I'm going to make a big reveal to you here, Dave. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, get ready, because I found that potentially I have another revenue stream. And this is amazing. It's a revenue stream that I was not even aware of. Apparently, by virtue of me making comments about the murder, I'll say it again, murder. There you go. Murder of Charlie Kirk. I'm now employed by the Mossad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Isn't that cool? So I don't know what the retirement system is like. Do I get a villa in Tel Aviv right on the Mediterranean?
This is all going to be edited.
Is that all part of the package?
That audio is now going to be edited, Joe, that it says, I am with the Mossad and I have a retirement villa. Just saying. But here's the reality check, Joe. This is not a game. There was a man that was murdered in Utah on a college campus. He's a man who has a wife and 2 children, and he's gone now. He went to speak in public and engage in conversation, and somebody decided to silence that, and he was killed. To solve this crime, to make the person who did it be held accountable, you have to solve the crime. Devoid of politics. Whether you agree with them or not, that doesn't have anything to do with it. The one thing in the United States of America that I have been brought up to believe in, Joseph Scott Morgan, is that, and for somebody who has lived in where I made my life by speaking words, is that I have the right to say whatever I want, as long as I don't incite anything. But more than that, you have the right to say what you want to say. And I should be willing to defend that right to the death of your right, even though I don't disagree, even though I don't agree with it. But we're not at that point anymore. Now we have become a society where half the country believes that, and the other half believes if you don't say what I want and agree with me, you're to be silenced, and your murder doesn't matter. You died. You should have been gone. And so, in trying to solve this case, I'm tired of the inflammatory rhetoric that has invaded this, to the point where I've seen you called out because you called it a murder, and it was a murder. It is a murder. And to solve the crime, you're solving a murder, not a political event. So who should be in charge?
Yeah. And again, it comes down to the, homicide in its purest sense is not in fact a federal charge. Now, there's certain circumstances where the feds will get involved in homicide investigations, but this is the bailiwick of the state authorities because it's a prosecutable case. All you have to do is look at the prosecutor there those couple of days following the murder of Charlie Kirk, and he was right out front of this thing saying, and as well he should have been, because he's the true authority here. The prosecutor is at this point in time. So we are in a position where we understand that he's moving forward with a case, a homicide case, that they are going to prosecute this guy. And they've said that they're going for the death penalty. All right. So when you begin to consider other possibilities as to who should be involved, who should be in charge, it falls apart really, really quickly. Again, the biggest case that I can cite, and I will cite it over and over again until I take my last breath, is JFK. Mm-hmm. If at that point in time, Dr. Rose had been allowed to take charge of JFK's body there in the hallway at Parkland, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today. So let's kind of start, from the beginning, just so that we can understand. I think a lot of people, first off, are ignorant of the law. In almost every state, there is a state statute that exists, and it has to do with autopsies. Okay, in every state that prescribes what the medical legal authorities have the ability to do. If you're interested in it, I urge you to actually look up Utah Code Section 26B-8-207. So one of the things that has been propagated out there was the fact that Charlie's body was not, in fact, autopsied. Okay? So how many times have you and I worked a case or covered a case, Dave, where as soon as an autopsy was complete, we had the medical examiner or coroner running out to a bank of microphones to make a statement about that particular case? I'll answer that for you. It doesn't happen. If it does, it is certainly the exception as opposed to the norm. All right. Medical examiners are not in the business of giving pressers in regards to homicides. And people believe that, silence is that you're, engaging in some kind of nefarious behavior, where I take the opposite look. I think that you're trying to keep things pristine, because the taint of public involvement, the taint of the knowledge that is disseminated to the public, can take this case and fly it into the side of the mountain. All right. If you look at this from the perspective of the state medical examiner, if they denied an autopsy on the body of Charlie Kirk, saying, you know what, I don't think we need to go any further here. We're just going to go ahead and release the body directly from the hospital, send the body to the mortuary, have the body embalmed, and fly Charlie's remains on down to Arizona. Well, what prosecutor in the world would go along with that? And I'm going to ask you a question. And Dave, do you think that there was a conversation between the medical examiner and the prosecutor in this case?
I would hope so.
Yeah, there would be. Just like there was a conversation between the medical examiner and the detectives or the investigators that are working the case. As a matter of fact, I submit to you that there were investigators from the police present for the autopsy. There were forensic technicians that were there present for the autopsy. It would not even surprise me if there was a representative from the DA's office there or the state prosecutor's office that was there, that bore witness to this. And they're going to speak directly to the pathologist because they know you kind of, particularly in the environment we're in right now, they know intrinsically that this case is potentially problematic. So if you flip that and you say, well, the medical examiner, by virtue of the fact that some mysterious intelligence agency out there, I don't know, let's even go darker. Let's say the Illuminati, because that's a word that's floating around out there. The Illuminati pressed the state medical examiner not to do an autopsy. So this person is going to put their entire career on the line because they're receiving a threat about not moving forward with an autopsy, that it's a good idea to just release his body. By the way, with probably a fragmented projectile still resting in the body. Have we ever covered a case, Dave, where we had somebody that was shot, it was a homicide, and the body was buried with a projectile in it? I don't recall. Now, there have been cases where projectiles have been buried with bodies, things that essentially thought it was a suicide initially, and they decided not to do an autopsy, and it turned out really bad. Actually, I've been a part of a couple of those in some offices I've worked with, and it's a nightmare. Trust me, an autopsy was performed. One more little point about this. The idea that there was a single forensic pathologist in that room, I don't buy that either. I think that more than likely, given the high-profile nature of this case, they probably had more eyes on this than just a single pair of eyes from the medical examiner that was there. So they would have to go in, do this examination on Charlie, and they're going to have to. There's a couple of ways that we do what are called pulling trajectories. You pull a trajectory at a scene, like if you look at the top, the flat top of that building where they allege the shooter fired from, they would have gone out to the scene and they would have pulled multiple points of trajectory from that one location down to where X marks the spot where Charlie was seated. We talked about, I know that when we did Idaho, how many times we do Idaho, the term Faro system came up, Faro, and this is a device that can go out and shoot multiple images from multiple perspectives all at one time. And they would have utilized that technology at the system, at the scene, in order to digitally map the entire area. So you pull it that way, but also you do a probative trajectory, which when you see that defect appear in Charlie's neck suddenly out of nowhere, and blood begins to issue forth, when his body would have been examined. And by the way, there's also another player in this, the surgeon. The surgeon actually made a statement. We'll get back to him in just a second. But you would do a probative trajectory at autopsy. So after they have x-rayed the remains in a case like this, which would have been extensive, they would have done APs and laterals. They would have put in trajectory rods literally into the site, which is the entrance. Okay, I'll get to that in a moment. Please remind me of that.
You just said APs and...
Yeah, APs and laterals. APs are like, so lateral view with the x-ray is you're shooting from the side. AP can either be full on anteriorly, or you can flip a body over and do full on posteriorly. So you're looking almost like a bird's eye view of the body, staring straight down at the body as it's face up, or you can turn the body face down into a prone position and shoot like that. So you get multiple layers. I don't know if that office has access to CT technology, which very well could come into play, which is very dramatic, particularly if you can freeze that projectile in that space for a moment where you can catch an image of it.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It is. And it's amazing technology. Now, whether or not they have access to that's another thing. I think that they probably would. This is a state-of-the-art medical examiner's office. And they would have done images as well. And I'm talking about photographic images, literally with a trajectory rod placed into the wound. That will, when you insert these rods that we use in the morgue, it'll give you, it'll give you an indication of the track of the wound. You have to be very gentle when you're doing it because you don't want to cavitate the area and damage the tissue that may have not been specifically damaged as a result of the projectile. So you just kind of gently place it in situ, and then just kind of to remove your hand from it, and where it comes to rest, that gives you an initial indication of, was this from above to below? Was it from below to above? That sort of thing with that wound track. And then after that, you go in and you do an extensive, and I mean extensive, neck dissection, layer by layer, buddy. I mean, and you're taking samples all along the way. The thing that helps you navigate this are going to be, in the immediate, are going to be the radiographs, the actual X-ray images, because when you take a look at an X-ray of a gunshot wound, if a round has fragmented, which I have all the suspicions in the world that this round fragmented, because we don't hear any talk about an exit wound, okay? So it's hit a bony process more than likely. All right. It may have shattered, or it may have deformed to the point where it lodged in a bone. You will see what's called a lead storm that's behind it. It's almost, if you imagine like a comet traveling through the air and all of the debris that the comet kind of kicks off. And, you know, some of these astronomers can do these beautiful photographs where you see all of that schmutz coming off of the tail of the comet. That's the track that it's taken, okay? And what you do is you navigate with the X-ray. I've literally stood at a table with a light board above us, and we're looking at an injury or at a neck or a chest where we're carefully dissecting the area, and then looking up at the radiographic image and trying to say, okay, we've got a bit of debris here, here, and here. And it appears that the core of the projectile is going to be located, you know, like in a neck. You can say, well, it might be between C1 and C2. Is it lodged in the spinal process or not? Has it gone through a disc space, or has it exited out of the spine and is literally just lying beneath the layer of the skin? That actually does happen many times. It looks like the person's got a big pimple on the back of their neck, but it's palpable. You can actually press on it. It feels very hard beneath the surface. All of this would have been done. And going to another point here that I think is very important to understand is people seem to be under the impression that people at the medical examiner's office don't work 24 hours a day. And the reason I say that is people will say, well, it sure didn't take them very long to do that autopsy, if they did, in fact, do the autopsy. Well, dude, I've done autopsies at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because the case required it. It's not like and plus you've got other cases coming in. All right. At Utah State Medical Examiner, rather busy shop. Okay. So they're not just handling Charlie Kirk's death that day. You've got other people, other bodies that are literally in line behind him. They have to keep this flowing, and they know that this autopsy is going to take a protracted period of time. So they would have set a very specific time as to when this autopsy would have been done. And yes, our tools at the medical examiner's office do in fact work after 5 p.m. in the afternoon. Okay, just so that we have that understanding. It's not like you just shut the door and say, okay, we're not receiving anybody. And yeah, our staff is incapable of working at that particular time. No. It's going to happen. And they would have had an assemblage of all of these people that showed up there. And guess what? When the truth finally does come out, and it will appear in court records, we will see at that particular time who all was there. And maybe they will have their own views about the death of Charlie Kirk. I was on a panel, I guess it's been just over a week ago now, I think. And I was on with 4 people, okay? I was on with Mike Baker, who is retired from the CIA. I was on with Rob O'Neill, the man that has been named as the individual that killed Osama bin Laden with the SEAL teams. And Pierce Morgan was leading the conversation. And I asserted at that moment in time, Brother Dave, that this was a homicide. This was a homicide, that to use the term assassination was problematic. And the theme that Pierce Morgan was going after at that particular time, and he recognized it, over a week ago, where he's saying, oh, well, there are so many conspiracy theories that are floating around out there. Should we assign any validity to any of the stuff that's floating out on the internet and the chat rooms and everything else that's going on? And I think it was Rob O'Neill who said, who made the statement that he had shot many people as a sniper in the SEAL teams. And he said that the defect on Charlie's neck, left of the midline, didn't look like any entrance wound he had ever seen. And I got to tell you, Dave, that defect in his neck looked like a lot of entrance wounds I've seen over the years. The people are under the impression that, I guess, that this round should have literally decapitated him. And that's just inaccurate. The fact that it entered at this location to the left of the midline, there is what appears to be at least venous blood that is issuing forth from this wound.
What's that? What is venous blood that you're talking about?
The blood is darker. So if you think about the veins or the venous system in the neck, like the jugular vein, those sorts of structures that are in there, the blood is going to have a darker appearance to it. I'm not saying that that's precisely what happened, because you can't really get a good view of this from that particular perspective, like the clarity of it. Even though people have tried to enhance it, I don't know how much validity to assign to that, but it did begin to pour profusely. And he also made another comment. This is Rob O'Neill. He said that he had never seen anyone he had shot with their shirt move. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's from a ballistic standpoint, that's kinetic energy, because you're using a round, a high-powered round, by the way, that if in fact it is a 30-06, which again people are saying now they don't think it's a 30-06, and I'll give you the reason why they're saying this. They don't think it's a 30-06, that it was something else. Well, either way, if it is a 30-06, that bullet weight, the projectile weight, is 180 grains. Okay, so it's rather hefty. All right, 180 grains. It's traveling at roughly 2,800 to 3,000 feet per second.
Right.
If you can imagine that, that number is astronomical. And this is a 0.30 inch. This is imperial measurement. It's a caliber that is based on the old imperial system. If it were, and this is very rough, but if it were converted to metric, it would be like the diameter would be like 7 millimeters as opposed to 0.30 inches. Okay. Traveling at that rate, yeah, it's when it hits soft tissue, it's not going to be a gigantic hole. All right. Now, I've seen entrance wounds that have kind of blown out. There are other things you have to consider relative to this, but the area just to the left of the midline in the neck is rather soft. It's malleable. You've got, the skin overlying kind of a robust area of muscle, which, yes, it's dense, but it's not bone dense, right? And then you've got all of the venous structures and arterial structures that are underlying that. It doesn't get to anything firm, really, until you get back to the spinal column, okay? So, yeah, the fact that this is happening. Now, back to this idea of the shirt moving, when you see that, that's a transfer of kinetic energy. So, a real simple experiment that you can go to like the most peaceful pond you can find. Pick up, I don't know, the tiniest pebble that you want to pick up, all right? And toss it into this peaceful, beautiful pond and watch what happens. Well, you're going to have ripples that go out. It's an energy transfer from this object striking that surface, and it literally just kind of bleeds out. Well, that's why you saw a shirt move like this.
I remember asking you that day about it because I saw that, before the videos got blurred, we happened to see one that was very clear
as
to what had happened. And I was shocked, but I did notice that. And I remember asking you, because I didn't know what it meant. And once you said that and you were telling me about it, I'm like, okay, that makes perfectly good sense. But Joe, perfectly good sense is not what a lot of people are looking for right now. And I saw a lot of comments critical of the type of weapon or the type of ammunition. And one of the things that you said, I can't remember which show, you were talking about the age of the ammunition and how that could actually impact what could also be done. Because what if the ammunition was older? Would that have an impact? Does that really mean something?
Yeah, I suppose it could. If the ammo itself is degraded in any way, we don't know what kind of care has been taken. We also don't know about the care of the weapon either. Internally, the mechanism of the weapon, how did it operate? Did it affect the projectile that's traveling down the barrel? Because, one of the first things they teach you in the military, even if the low level that I was in many, many years ago, is your life depends on your rifle. It'll only perform as well as you clean it. All right. So performance, diminishes significantly after a period of time. If you're not taking care of the weapon, the ammo that you choose to cycle through it as well. You also don't know about the quality of the ammunition, like who manufactured this. Is it some kind of like Russian ammo that was brought into the country, or is this something that was created by Winchester or Remington here in the United States? Don't know. They haven't necessarily released that information yet. So that's going to play a part as well. Both internal and external ballistics come into play here. What's going to affect the flight of the round, the physical stability of the projectile itself, depending upon age, perhaps. And it's still going to have a level of lethality to it, but everything that is either done or not done to a weapon or ammunition plays into this. And that's something that they're going to be examining with this. I can tell you this, with the weapon that they have collected, the one that was found there in the quasi-wooded area, that's right off campus. Mm-hmm. They're pumping rounds through this thing, Dave. They've taken this thing back to a ballistics lab. My suspicion would be probably ATF. Okay. Now it may go to the state crime lab as well. But if the ATF is doing this on a consulting basis, they have a wide range. You wouldn't believe the catalog of ammunition they have just in the firearms lab there that if they're looking to match these projectiles or the ammo that was used, they can go back specifically and approximate that ammo in order to, because what would have been collected at autopsy would have been if it's fragmented, you expect the bulk of the round to be the base, which is the most robust part at the bottom. So what you're trying to replicate in these testing are the rifling marks that are created as the bullet twists down the barrel. They're going to fire live rounds through this same weapon, either into a water tank or into a cotton box, which is going to preserve the ballistic characteristics. You can fire it into a big bin that contains water, and there's a basket, a metal basket at the bottom of this thing. And so as the projectile loses energy when it strikes the water, that projectile free floats through the water and it lands in the barrel, and the rifling is not impacted. So you have a pristine bullet, and then you have this gnarled up bullet that you recovered at autopsy. You put it on a comparison scope, and the ballistics expert begins to match this up. And this is going to be key, because people will say, well, it's not a 30-06 or it was a different weapon. That's going to be sussed out pretty quickly. So that little house of cards is going to fall apart just by what is standard operating procedure in every other firearms-related homicide that we work across this country. All right? It's not going to instantaneously change because it's Charlie Kirk. They're going to stick with this. This is why it's important that we remember this is a homicide investigation that took place in the state of Utah. Now, I guess if you want to, you can say that there has been some specter that has presented itself inside of the agency that's taking control of the weapon, and they're going to conduct their own test, and that they're going to come up with bullets that are not actually part of the investigation, and they're going to try to put us off scent here, and that we're not going to get the real data. That ain't the way it works, because if that is the way it works, you're going to have to get all of the law enforcement people, even at state level, in on the game as well. So now we've got the medical examiner, who would have to be part of the process. The forensic scientists that are going to be doing the ballistic examinations, they would have to be part of this conspiratorial process. Probably the prosecutor would have to be up on it as well, because, the prosecutor doesn't want an autopsy, right? They're just going to send the body off. So he'd have to be keen to it. So you're going to have to get all of these actors on board, and also the physician. The surgeon presents an interesting character in all of this, because that individual was eyes on. They were eyes on the case. As soon as Charlie rolled through the doors, do you think the surgeon that's on call is even aware that Charlie Kirk is in town? Probably not. Maybe they were, but probably not. You know why? Because they're doing surgeon stuff. They don't have time. They don't. I've been around these people. They're going to know is that we've got a 30-something-year-old white male rolling in. He's unresponsive, and he's got an apparent gunshot wound to the neck. All hands on deck. Here we go. All right? Just like it happened when Kennedy was rolling into Parkland in the back of that damn limousine load those many years ago. They had an awareness the president was in town, obviously. They knew it was called ahead that JFK, that the president was mortally wounded. He was being brought to Parkland. They're not going to be up on the game here. You know what I'm saying? They're going to take every patient through the door that comes in. There's also been another rumor that has been floated about, and I'm not going to mention their name, but their initials are Candace Owens. She apparently has stated that in one of these things she does on her podcast or whatever, where she's saying that she has inside information regarding the death certificate and the fact that the caliber of the weapon is not named in the death certificate, and that it was not mentioned anywhere, invalidates the process. that these are always the caliber is always mentioned on the death certificate. Dave, bear with me. Indulge me just for a moment. Indulge my insanity here just for a second. Death certificate, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Cause of death, multiple gunshot wounds of head and neck. That's what was on President's death certificate. Next. Here's a good one. Lee Harvey Oswald, hemorrhage secondary to gunshot wound of the chest. Now, I know that Jack Ruby fired a .38 caliber revolver. It's not mentioned in the death certificate. Hang on one second. But wait, there's more. Let's see. Who do I have here? Hang on. Oh, Kurt Cobain. Yeah, Kurt Cobain. I have him right here. Oh, Kurt. Well, he's got a contact perforating shotgun wound to the head. You notice that it's not mentioned that it's a 20 gauge, a 16 gauge, a 12 gauge, hell, a 10 gauge elephant gun. It's not mentioned. They say shotgun wound. Okay. Hang on. Who else do I have here? Let's see. One more. I know I've got him. Oh, Tupac. He was shot. Guess what? Multiple gunshot wounds. There is not a caliber mentioned in the death certificate. This is bordering into the realm of the absurd. You have people that are making comments about things that they have no understanding of, period. They feel as though that they're mining out knowledge that all the rest of us need to know. But what is it that they always do? They always say that we have unnamed sources, but we'll get back to that. But it never comes to fruition, because I think it was her that was actually putting out for a time that there could be a possibility he was shot from the back. Yeah. Well, now she's saying that, okay, Charlie Kirk has in fact died from a gunshot wound to the neck. He was shot from the front. Okay. And she gives this great anatomical descriptor of his vertebral bodies back there. He shot here and right here. Thank you, Candace. Thank you so much for giving us that information after you've stirred the waters at this point in time. Guys, listen, the only thing I can say is that patience is, in fact, the watchword. As a matter of fact, it's going to be the watchword for the next few months. If you're easily distracted, if you need some kind of conspiratorial case that you want to go follow, go out there and knock yourself out. But understand that the authorities in Utah are not conducting an assassination investigation. They are conducting a murder investigation. A murder investigation where, in the balance, hangs a young man's life who the state prosecutor has already said they're going after the death penalty in. Keep your ears open. Let's see what happens. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.